The morning sun streamed through the windows of Atlanta General Hospital as Sarah Johnson hurried down the bright hallway of the rehabilitation ward. At 32, she was one of the most respected nurses in the department, known for her gentle touch and warm smile that could comfort even the most difficult patients. That Tuesday morning seemed like any other until Sarah noticed a new patient's file on her desk. The name read Michael Thompson, 35, Physical Therapy Unit. As she flipped through the pages, she learned he had been a professional dance instructor before a tragic car accident 2 years ago left him unable to use his legs. Sarah gathered her supplies and made her way to room 407. She knocked softly on the door, expecting to find another frustrated or depressed patient. Instead, she heard a cheerful voice call out, "Come in, the door's open." When she entered, Sarah was struck by the sight before her. Michael sat in his wheelchair near the window, but what caught her attention wasn't his disability. It was his brilliant smile that seemed to light up the entire room. His warm brown eyes crinkled at the corners as he grinned at her, and despite being in a hospital gown, he carried himself with natural dignity. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson. I'm Sarah, your nurse for today," she said, pushing her cart of supplies into the room. "Please call me Michael," he replied, wheeling himself closer. "Unless you want me to call you Nurse Johnson all day." His playful tone made Sarah laugh, something she rarely did during her morning rounds. As Sarah checked his vitals and changed his bandages, Michael told her stories about his dancing days. He described the joy of teaching elderly couples to waltz for their 50th anniversaries, helping awkward teenagers prepare for their proms, and choreographing wedding dances. Instead of bitterness, his voice held only fond memories and occasional humor. "You know what's funny?" he said while Sarah recorded his blood pressure. "I used to teach people how to move their feet, and now I'm learning to move mine all over again. Life has a strange sense of irony, doesn't it?" Sarah found herself drawn into longer conversations with Michael as she worked. He asked about her family, her dreams, and even her favorite dance moves. When she admitted she had 2 left feet, he gasped in mock horror. "That's unacceptable," he declared, making her laugh again. "Even from this chair, I bet I could teach you a thing or two about rhythm." Throughout the day, Sarah found reasons to check on Michael more often than strictly necessary. She noticed how other staff members seemed to linger in his room too, attracted by his positive energy and genuine interest in their lives. Even the usually grumpy janitor, Mr. Peters, was seen chuckling at one of Michael's jokes. During her lunch break, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about Michael's story. She had worked with many patients who became depressed after losing their mobility, but Michael was different. He spoke about his future plans with enthusiasm, describing how he wanted to adapt his dance studio to teach people with disabilities. When her shift was ending, Sarah made one final stop at room 407. She found Michael practicing his physical therapy exercises, determination etched on his face as he worked with resistance bands. "Leaving already?" he asked, looking up with those warm eyes that made Sarah's heart skip a beat. "Yes, my shift is over," she replied, suddenly feeling shy. "You've been an exceptional patient today, Michael." "And you've been an extraordinary nurse, Sarah," he said softly. "Will you be here tomorrow?" Sarah nodded, trying to maintain her professional composure despite the flutter in her stomach. "Same time, same place." "Good," Michael smiled, "because I have so many more stories to tell you." As Sarah walked to her car that evening, she realized something had changed. In just one day, Michael Thompson had shown her that disability didn't define a person's spirit. His wheelchair couldn't contain his joy, his dreams, or his ability to touch others' lives. Without realizing it, Sarah had experienced the beginning of something that would change her life forever. She just didn't know it yet. Little did she know, this was just the first chapter of an extraordinary love story that would challenge everything she thought she knew about love, ability, and the power of the human spirit. In the weeks that followed their first meeting, Sarah found herself looking forward to her shifts at Atlanta General Hospital more than ever before. Michael's daily physical therapy sessions became the highlight of her routine, and she often spent her lunch breaks in room 407, sharing stories and laughs with him. One afternoon, while helping Michael with his exercises, Sarah's closest friend and fellow nurse, Lisa, pulled her aside in the hallway. "Girl, we need to talk," Lisa said, her face serious. "I see how you look at him, and I'm worried about you." Sarah felt her defenses rise. What do you mean? He's in a wheelchair, Sarah. Think about your future. What kind of life would that be? Lisa's words, though spoken softly, hit Sarah like a slap in the face. That evening, during her drive home, Sarah couldn't shake off Lisa's comments. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Baby, I heard from Lisa about this patient you're getting close to. We should talk." Sarah gripped her steering wheel tighter. She hadn't even told her mother about Michael yet, but small-town gossip traveled fast. When she got home, her mother was already waiting on her front porch. "Sarah Jean Johnson," her mother started, using all three names. Never a good sign. "I raised you to be smart, to think about your future. A man in a wheelchair can't provide for you the way you deserve." Sarah took a deep breath before responding. "Mama, did you know Michael owned 3 dance studios before his accident? Did you know he's already planning to reopen them with programs for people with disabilities? His wheelchair doesn't define who he is." Meanwhile, Michael was fighting his own battles at physical therapy. "You're making amazing progress," his therapist, Dr. Rodriguez, said as Michael pushed through another challenging session. "But will it ever be enough?" Michael asked, wiping sweat from his brow. Sarah deserves someone whole. Dr. Rodriguez stopped what she was doing and faced him directly. "Listen to me, Michael Thompson. I've seen how that woman looks at you. She sees you, not your wheelchair. Don't let your insecurities push away something beautiful." The next day, Sarah was organizing supplies when she overheard 2 orderlies gossiping. "Can you believe she's actually dating the guy in 407? Must be desperate or something." Sarah slammed the cabinet shut, making both orderlies jump. "His name is Michael," she said firmly, "and he's more of a man than either of you will ever be." That evening, Michael noticed Sarah was quieter than usual during their daily chat. "What's wrong?" he asked, reaching for her hand. Sarah hesitated before speaking. "Everyone seems to have an opinion about us. They think I'm making a mistake. They think I'm not seeing the reality of the situation." Michael's face fell, and he started to pull his hand away. "Maybe they're right. Maybe you deserve." "Don't you dare finish that sentence," Sarah interrupted, holding his hand tighter. "Do you know what I see when I look at you, Michael Thompson? I see a man who makes me laugh until my sides hurt. I see someone who remembers how every hospital staff member takes their coffee. I see a person who's rebuilding his life with more grace and courage than anyone I've ever met." Tears welled up in Michael's eyes. "But there's so much I can't do. And there's so much you can," Sarah replied. "You taught me more about strength and resilience in these few weeks than I've learned in my entire life." That weekend, Sarah invited Michael to have dinner with her mother. Despite her initial reluctance, Sarah's mother couldn't help but be charmed by Michael's warmth and humor. By the end of the evening, she was showing him Sarah's embarrassing childhood photos and sharing family recipes. As Sarah walked Michael to his adapted van that night, he said, "Thank you for not giving up on us." "Some things are worth fighting for," Sarah replied, kissing him softly. Later that night, Sarah posted a photo of herself and Michael on social media with the caption, "Love doesn't need legs to stand strong." The supportive comments that flooded in proved that while some people might never understand their relationship, many others could see the beauty in their growing love story. 6 months had passed since Sarah and Michael first met at Atlanta General Hospital. Spring had arrived in Georgia, painting the city with cherry blossoms and warm sunshine. Michael had been discharged from the hospital months ago, but continued his physical therapy as an outpatient. His dance studios were thriving again, now offering special classes for people with disabilities. On a beautiful Saturday evening, Michael texted Sarah, "Wear something pretty. I have a surprise for you at the Atlanta Botanical Gardens at 6 p.m. Sarah felt butterflies in her stomach as she chose a flowing yellow sundress, Michael's favorite color. When she arrived at the gardens, she found a trail of yellow rose petals leading down the main pathway. A young girl in a wheelchair, one of Michael's dance students, waited at the entrance with a single rose. "Mr. Michael asked me to give you this," the girl said with a bright smile, handing Sarah the flower. "Follow the petals." As Sarah walked along the petal-lined path, she encountered more of Michael's students. Each one held a rose and a card with a memory written on it. There was Tommy, who had learned to dance despite his prosthetic leg. "Thank you for showing us that love has no limitations." Then came Maria, who danced from her wheelchair. You taught us that beauty comes in all forms. The path led to the garden's grand pavilion, where Sarah could hear soft music playing. Her heart skipped a beat when she saw Michael waiting in the center, surrounded by twinkling lights. He wore a crisp blue suit, and his wheelchair was decorated with tiny yellow lights that matched the evening stars beginning to appear above. "Sarah Johnson," Michael called out as she approached, his voice filled with emotion. "Do you remember the first day we met?" Sarah nodded, clutching the roses, her heart racing. "I was in a dark place before I met you," Michael continued. "I thought my life as a dance instructor was over. I thought love wasn't in the cards for someone like me anymore." He wheeled closer to her, taking her hand. "But then you walked into room 407 with that beautiful smile, and my whole world lit up again." From behind the nearby bushes, more of Michael's students emerged, each holding a letter. They arranged themselves to spell out "Marry me" as Michael continued speaking. "You never saw my wheelchair as a barrier. You saw me, just me. You fought for us when others doubted. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." Michael reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "You helped me rediscover my purpose, showing me that I could still touch lives through dance, just in a different way." Sarah's eyes filled with tears as Michael opened the box, revealing a beautiful diamond ring with tiny yellow sapphires on either side. "My legs may not work the way they used to," Michael said, his voice trembling slightly, "but my heart works perfectly. And it beats for you, Sarah. Every single day, it beats for you." He took a deep breath and smiled up at her. "I can't get down on one knee, but I can promise you this: I will spend every day of my life showing you the kind of love you've shown me. The kind that doesn't see barriers, only possibilities. The kind that dances even when the world says you can't." By now, a small crowd had gathered, including some of Sarah's co-workers from the hospital and both their families. Sarah's mother stood wiping tears from her eyes, standing next to Michael's parents who were beaming with pride. "Sarah Johnson, will you marry me?" Sarah's "yes" echoed through the garden, followed by cheers and applause from everyone present. As Michael slipped the ring onto her finger, his students released yellow balloons into the evening sky. "I have one more surprise," Michael said after Sarah had admired her ring. He pressed a button on his wheelchair's armrest, and music began to play, their song, "At Last" by Etta James. "May I have this dance?" he asked, extending his hand. Sarah sat gracefully in his lap, and Michael guided his wheelchair in smooth, gentle circles as they danced their first dance as an engaged couple. Above them, the setting sun painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, as if nature itself was celebrating their love. Later that night, as they shared a celebratory dinner with their families, Sarah looked at her ring sparkling in the candlelight and knew that sometimes the greatest love stories don't follow the usual path, they create their own. The months following Michael and Sarah's engagement were filled with both excitement and challenges as they planned their perfect wedding. Sarah's mother, who had once been their biggest critic, now became their strongest supporter, taking charge of many wedding arrangements with unexpected enthusiasm. One sunny morning, Sarah and her mother visited the fifth wedding venue of the week. The owner proudly showed them around the beautiful historic building. "And here's our grand staircase for the bride's entrance," he announced, gesturing to a magnificent marble staircase. Sarah's mother spoke up before Sarah could. "Actually, we need a venue that's fully accessible. The groom uses a wheelchair, and we want him to move freely everywhere during his wedding." The venue owner's face fell slightly. "Oh, well, we have a service elevator in the back." "No, thank you," Sarah's mother said firmly. "My future son-in-law won't be entering through any back doors on his wedding day." Later that week, they found the perfect place, a modern event center with beautiful gardens and wheelchair-friendly pathways throughout. The owner, Mrs. Chen, had experience hosting weddings for people with disabilities and offered helpful suggestions for the setup. "We can arrange the tables in a way that creates wide aisles," Mrs. Chen explained, sketching a layout. "And our dance floor has a special smooth surface that's perfect for wheelchairs." Michael threw himself into planning too, particularly when it came to the entertainment. He spent hours with his dance students, choreographing a special surprise performance for Sarah. "Just because I'm in a wheelchair doesn't mean we can't have amazing dances at our wedding," he told his excited students. The dress shopping brought its own unique considerations. Sarah wanted a dress that would look beautiful whether she was standing or sitting in Michael's lap for their wedding dance. Her mother suggested having extra fabric removed from the bottom to prevent it from getting caught in the wheelchair's wheels. At the bridal boutique, the consultant brought out a stunning gown with delicate lace sleeves. "It's perfect," Sarah's mother whispered, tears in her eyes. "And look, the skirt detaches for the reception. You can dance with Michael comfortably." One evening, while reviewing their growing list of wedding plans, Michael noticed Sarah looking worried. "What's on your mind, beautiful?" he asked, reaching for her hand. "I just want everything to be perfect," Sarah admitted. "I don't want you to face any difficulties on our big day." Michael pulled her onto his lap, something that had become their special way of having serious conversations. "Sarah, marrying you will make it perfect, regardless of any logistics. Besides, look at all these amazing people helping us." He was right. Their friends and family had rallied around them in touching ways. The hospital staff where they met organized a beautiful engagement party. Michael's physical therapy team offered advice on preventing fatigue during the long wedding day. Even Sarah's teenage nephews spent hours researching wheelchair-friendly honeymoon destinations. The most touching moment came when Sarah's father visited Michael at his dance studio one afternoon. He handed Michael a small box containing his own wedding ring. "I want you to have this, son," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I've watched how you love my daughter, with respect, with creativity, with determination. A man who loves like that deserves to wear this ring." As their wedding day approached, Sarah and Michael sent out unique invitations that reflected their journey. The cards featured a beautiful illustration of a couple dancing, the woman in a flowing dress, the man in a wheelchair, their love evident in their matching smiles. The RSVPs came back with touching notes. "You two redefine what true love looks like," wrote one friend. "Thank you for showing us that love knows no boundaries," wrote another. One evening, as they finalized the seating arrangements, Michael looked at Sarah and smiled. "You know what's amazing? We're not just planning a wedding. We're showing people that love doesn't have to follow traditional paths to be beautiful." Sarah kissed him softly. "And we're just getting started," she whispered, both of them excited for the incredible day that awaited them. The morning of Sarah and Michael's wedding dawned bright and clear, with soft spring sunshine filtering through the trees at the event center. In the bridal suite, Sarah sat at the vanity mirror while her mother carefully pinned tiny white flowers into her braided updo. "Something borrowed," her mother said softly, placing her own pearl earrings on Sarah's ears. "I wore these when I married your father." She paused, looking at her daughter's reflection. "You know, I was wrong about Michael. That man loves you more purely than anyone I've ever seen." Down the hall in the groom's room, Michael was getting ready with help from his father and best man. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his yellow bow tie, Sarah's favorite color. His wheelchair had been decorated with subtle white and yellow ribbons, matching their wedding colors. "Son," his father said, placing a hand on his shoulder, "I've never been more proud of you than I am today. You didn't just overcome your accident, you showed everyone what real strength looks like." The event center's garden was transformed into a wedding paradise. Wide, smooth paths were laid out between the rows of chairs, decorated with yellow roses and white lilies. Their guests began arriving, filling the space with excited chatter and emotional smiles. Michael took his place at the altar, his wheelchair positioned perfectly under an arch of flowers. His students from the dance studio sat in the front rows, all dressed in their finest clothes, their faces beaming with joy for their beloved teacher. The music started, not the traditional wedding march, but a gentle piano version of "At Last," their song. Everyone turned to watch as Sarah appeared at the garden entrance. She was a vision in her wedding dress, which flowed around her like a cloud. Her father walked beside her, matching his pace to her slow, graceful steps down the aisle. Michael's breath caught in his throat at the sight of her. Tears welled up in his eyes as she came closer, her own eyes shining with love. When she reached the altar, she bent down to kiss Michael's cheek before taking her place beside him. The officiant, Dr. Rodriguez, Michael's physical therapist who had become a dear friend, began the ceremony. "We are gathered here today to celebrate not just love, but the power of seeing beyond what others might consider limitations. Sarah and Michael have shown us that true love knows no bounds." Sarah and Michael had written their own vows. Michael went first, his voice strong and clear despite his emotion. "Sarah, you walked into my hospital room and didn't see a broken man. You saw me. You taught me that my wheelchair doesn't define my ability to love. I promise to spend every day showing you the same unwavering faith you've shown me." Sarah wiped away tears as she began her vows. "Michael, you rolled into my life and showed me what real courage looks like. You taught me that love isn't about what a person can or cannot do. It's about how they make your heart feel. I promise to dance through life with you, whether that's standing or sitting, in joy or in challenge." When they exchanged rings, Michael's hands were steady. Sarah's father's wedding band fit perfectly on his finger, gleaming next to Sarah's engagement ring with its yellow sapphires. "By the power vested in me," Dr. Rodriguez announced with a wide smile, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Sarah leaned down, cupping Michael's face in her hands as they shared their first kiss as a married couple. The garden erupted in cheers and applause. Michael's students released yellow and white balloons into the sky, creating a beautiful backdrop for the newlyweds. As they made their way back down the aisle together, Sarah sitting proudly on Michael's lap, their guests threw yellow rose petals. The love surrounding them was palpable, showing everyone present that the most beautiful love stories are often the ones that break from tradition. Lisa, Sarah's friend who had once doubted their relationship, wiped tears from her eyes as she watched them. "I've never seen a more perfect couple," she whispered to Sarah's mother, who nodded in agreement, her own eyes glistening with happy tears. The event center's grand ballroom sparkled with hundreds of tiny lights, creating a magical atmosphere for Sarah and Michael's wedding reception. The space had been transformed into an elegant wonderland, with tables decorated with yellow and white flowers, and wide pathways between them allowing Michael to move freely among their guests. As the newlyweds prepared to make their entrance, Sarah's mother fussed over them in the waiting area. "Michael, your bow tie is slightly crooked," she said, reaching down to adjust it with the care of a mother fixing her own son's clothes. Sarah watched with tears in her eyes, remembering how far they had come from her mother's initial doubts. "Ladies and gentlemen," the DJ announced, "please welcome, for the first time as husband and wife, Mr. and Mrs. Michael and Sarah Thompson." The doors opened, and they entered to thunderous applause. Michael had practiced this moment countless times. He guided his wheelchair smoothly with one hand, while the other held Sarah's as she walked beside him, her dress flowing gracefully with each step. They both beamed with joy as they made their way to the center of the room. The DJ's voice softened as he spoke again, "And now, the couple will share their first dance as husband and wife." A hush fell over the room as the opening notes of "At Last" began to play. This was the moment many guests had wondered about. How would they handle the traditional first dance? But Sarah and Michael had prepared something special. Sarah gracefully sat on Michael's lap, arranging her dress carefully. Michael had spent months practicing wheelchair dance movements with his students, and now it was time to show everyone what they had created. He guided them in smooth, gentle circles, using his wheelchair's movements to create a beautiful dance that was uniquely theirs. As they danced, Michael softly sang the lyrics in Sarah's ear, making her smile grow even wider. Their guests watched in awe as the couple moved across the dance floor, proving that love could create its own kind of dance. Several people wiped away tears at the beautiful sight. The dance ended with Michael spinning them in a perfect circle as Sarah leaned back, trusting him completely. The room erupted in applause and cheers, many guests giving them a standing ovation. Next came the toasts. Sarah's father stood first, his voice thick with emotion. "When Sarah first told me about Michael, I had concerns," he admitted. "But watching them together taught me that love isn't about what a person can't do, it's about what they choose to do. Michael chose to love my daughter with a dedication and creativity that has amazed us all." Michael's mother spoke next, sharing stories of how Sarah had brought light back into her son's life after his accident. She saw past the wheelchair to the wonderful man we've always known Michael to be. "Today, we don't just gain a daughter-in-law, we gain a hero who showed us all what unconditional love looks like." During dinner, Michael and Sarah made their way from table to table, greeting their guests. At the table where Michael's dance students sat, they had a surprise waiting. The students had created a video montage of their practice sessions, showing Michael learning to dance in his wheelchair, determined to make their wedding day perfect. "You've taught us so much more than dance," one student said, hugging them both. "You've taught us that nothing is impossible when you have love." The celebration continued with laughter, tears, and joy. The dance floor stayed busy, with guests following the couple's example of finding creative ways to dance together. Some sat on chairs to dance with Michael at his level, while others simply moved to the music in their own unique ways. As the evening progressed, Sarah looked around the room at their celebrating friends and family. She saw Lisa dancing with one of Michael's students, learning wheelchair dance moves. She watched her mother showing Michael's younger cousins photos on her phone, probably embarrassing childhood pictures of Sarah. Everyone had come together, leaving their prejudices and preconceptions at the door. Sarah squeezed Michael's hand, and he looked up at her with those warm brown eyes she'd fallen in love with in room 407. Happy? He asked softly. Before she could answer, the DJ called everyone's attention. And now, he announced, the groom has a special surprise prepared for his bride. The DJ's announcement caught everyone's attention, but none more than Sarah's. She looked at Michael questioningly, but he just smiled, that mysterious smile she'd grown to both love and be suspicious of over their time together. Ladies and gentlemen, the DJ continued, please gather around the dance floor. The groom has been working on something special for many months, and now it's time. Dr. Rodriguez, Michael's physical therapist, quietly rolled a strange-looking walker onto the dance floor. Sarah's heart began to race as she noticed it wasn't a regular walker. It was more sophisticated, with various supports and mechanisms she didn't understand. Michael squeezed Sarah's hand and whispered, trust me, just as he had done so many times before in their relationship. She nodded, though her eyes were already filling with tears, somehow sensing what was about to happen. The room fell completely silent as Michael wheeled himself to the center of the dance floor. Dr. Rodriguez and Michael's father positioned themselves on either side of him, while two other physical therapists Sarah recognized from the hospital stood nearby. Sarah, Michael began, his voice carrying across the hushed room. From the day I met you, you believed in me more than I believed in myself. You never saw limitations, you only saw possibilities. He paused, taking a deep breath. For the past 8 months, I've been working on a surprise for you, something to show you that your faith in me wasn't misplaced. Sarah watched, her hands covering her mouth, as Dr. Rodriguez and Michael's father helped position the specialized walker in front of Michael's wheelchair. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Everyone held their breath, understanding they were about to witness something extraordinary. Michael released his wheelchair brakes and placed his hands firmly on the walker's supports. This is for you, my love, he said softly, looking directly into Sarah's eyes. Then, slowly but surely, Michael began to push himself up from his wheelchair. A collective gasp filled the room as Michael's body rose. His arms trembled with effort, but his face showed pure determination. Inch by inch, he lifted himself until he was standing. Actually standing, supported by the walker, but upright for the first time since his accident. Sarah burst into tears, her legs nearly giving out. Her father quickly brought a chair for her to sit on as she watched her husband, the man everyone said would never walk again, take his first step. It was a small step, barely a few inches, but to everyone in that room, it might as well have been a mile. Michael's face beamed with triumph and effort as he took another tiny step, then another. Dr. Rodriguez and the other therapists stayed close, but they weren't helping. This was all Michael. Oh my God, Sarah whispered through her tears. Oh my God. Michael's mother was sobbing openly, clutching her husband's arm. The dance students were jumping up and down with excitement. Even the wedding photographers had to wipe their eyes as they captured this incredible moment. After what seemed like both an eternity and just a second, Michael had crossed about 5 feet of the dance floor. He was sweating, his arms trembling from the effort, but his smile never wavered. Sarah, he called softly, come here. Sarah rose on shaky legs and walked to her husband. For the first time in their relationship, they were standing face to face. Michael let go of one of the walker's supports, a move he practiced countless times in secret, and cupped Sarah's cheek in his hand. I wanted to stand with you, just once, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. To look into your eyes at the same height, to show you and everyone else that nothing is impossible with love like ours. Sarah couldn't speak through her tears. Instead, she wrapped her arms gently around Michael, being careful not to disturb his balance, and kissed him. The room erupted in applause, cheers, and sobs of joy. Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward to explain to the amazed guests that Michael had been undergoing intensive experimental therapy, working in secret for months to build enough strength for this moment. He was determined to stand with his bride on their wedding day, she said, wiping her own tears. And that determination, combined with his love for Sarah, helped him achieve what many thought was impossible. After the incredible surprise of Michael standing and taking steps, the atmosphere at the reception transformed into something magical. The air buzzed with joy and possibility, as if everyone in the room had witnessed a miracle, which in many ways they had. Michael had returned to his wheelchair, exhausted but happy, with Sarah never leaving his side. Their guests couldn't stop talking about what they had witnessed, but more importantly, they couldn't stop noticing how the couple looked at each other, with even deeper love and admiration than before. "I can't believe you kept this secret from me for 8 months," Sarah said, holding Michael's hand as they enjoyed their wedding cake. Her eyes still glistened with tears of joy. Michael grinned. "It wasn't easy. There were so many times I wanted to tell you, especially on days when the therapy was really tough, but I wanted this moment to be perfect." One of Michael's teenage dance students approached their table, her own wheelchair decorated with yellow ribbons to match the wedding theme. "Mr. Michael," she said shyly, "what you did today, it gives me hope. Maybe I can stand at my wedding someday too." Sarah watched as Michael took the girl's hand. "Amy, whether you stand, dance, or roll down that aisle, you're going to be beautiful. What matters isn't how we move, it's how we love." Later in the evening, Dr. Rodriguez shared more details about Michael's journey with their curious guests. "The experimental therapy program isn't a cure," she explained carefully, "but it shows that with dedication and the right support, many patients can achieve more mobility than previously thought possible." Michael's determination to stand with Sarah today helped push the boundaries of what we thought was achievable. As the night went on, more surprises unfolded. Michael's dance students performed a specially choreographed routine, mixing traditional dance with wheelchair dance moves. The performance ended with all of them forming a heart shape around the newlyweds, showing how their love had created a community of acceptance and possibility. Sarah's mother stood to make one final toast. "When Michael first came into our lives, I worried about my daughter's future," she admitted. "Today, he showed us all that the only limits that exist are the ones we put on ourselves. Michael and Sarah, you've taught us that love doesn't just overcome obstacles, it refuses to see them as obstacles at all." As the evening drew to a close, guests began to leave, each one hugging the couple and sharing how their story had touched them. Lisa, Sarah's friend who had once questioned their relationship, waited until last. "I was so wrong," she said, tears in her eyes. "You two have the most beautiful love I've ever seen. Thank you for showing me what real love looks like." The DJ announced the last dance of the night. Without hesitation, several guests grabbed chairs and sat down, following Michael and Sarah's example from their first dance. Soon the dance floor was filled with people dancing at different heights, some standing, some sitting, all moving to the music in their own way. "Look what we started," Sarah whispered to Michael as they watched their guests. "This is just the beginning," Michael replied. "Tomorrow, we start working on adapting my dance studios to teach wheelchair ballroom dancing. Every person deserves to feel the joy of dance, no matter how they move." As they prepared to leave for their honeymoon, a specially arranged trip to an accessible resort in Hawaii, Sarah and Michael took one last look at the ballroom. The empty chairs scattered across the dance floor, the fallen flower petals, and the lingering joy in the air told the story of a wedding that had become more than a celebration of their love. It had become a testament to the power of believing in possibilities. "Ready for our next adventure, Mrs. Thompson?" Michael asked, his eyes twinkling. Sarah leaned down to kiss him. "With you? Always." As they left the venue, their wedding car decorated with yellow ribbons and "Just Married" signs, both knew that their story would continue to inspire others. They had shown the world that true love knows no boundaries, that disabilities don't define relationships, and that sometimes the most beautiful love stories are the ones that challenge our expectations. Their wedding day had ended, but their journey of proving that love could overcome any obstacle was just beginning.